Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another edition of this Omnibus Roundtable TV show. I'm your host, Mark Allen, from the National Black Wall Street, USA. And as always, let me thank our dear sister, Wanda Carter, for inviting me back to sit here in this seat that for so many years I sat with my former business partner for over 20 years, the late Morgan Carter. The conversation started. So I thank you, Wanda, for bringing me back here in this seat. And we're back here to bring you real information, as Reverend Al Sharpton said, came to keep it real. And brothers and sisters, I told you before, in 39 years of public service, I am now on the most difficult job I think I've ever had in my life. By assuming this position with the National Black Wall Street, we're in the 90th year anniversary of when black people, back in 1921, when corporations wouldn't invest in them, when the white folks wouldn't treat them right, they said, so what? You don't want to help us? We'll help ourselves. And black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, used their own mind, used their own spirit, had their own consciousness that said, we'll spend our own money with our own institutions, and we will develop our own businesses, and we will create our own jobs. And here we are 90 years later, still challenging somebody else to do for us what I promise you, 90 years later, we got the collective genius to do for ourselves, and we'll be going to Gary, Indiana in late October 21st through the 23rd, going back to where they had the first political empowerment convention. We're going back where it started. We're going back to basics, because I'm convinced that right now, God has given us what we need to go back to basics and do like the people of Tulsa did. Stop arguing with people about what they don't want to give you. Let's go back to making our own clothes, growing our own food, investing in our own communities, and building our own jobs if we never got another grant or loan from anybody. Now, with that said, we're going to bring some minds together, and we're going to talk this thing through, because collectively, when you put a puzzle together, a lot of these little pieces look real crazy just as little pieces. But once you start putting those pieces together, my friends, we start seeing the complete picture. And let's see if we can see that right now. Joining me today on this panel is somebody you should recognize from being on this station. He has Grady's Notebook program here. Grady Davis, thank you for being here. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Grady over here. I'm looking around at Grady. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Mark.
And then over here in the middle is a young man I've recognized in the community that I said, reminds me of myself when I was 25 or 20-something. But people gave an opportunity to be in community, and to see this young man just moving around community, just trying to learn and trying to make a difference in terms of this next generation. It's time for him to start being seen and heard. Brother Darius, Randle, youth activist.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And now over here is Russ Richardson, who you also see here. He has the body, mind, and spirit connection, and he's a psychologist, because we're dealing now with our state of mind. And so let's have him part of the conversation. Russ, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get to where we are, because it took me some time before I figured this out. I mean, I've been in the movement almost 40 years now, and I've worked and I've worked and I've worked, and I finally realized that we were missing something. And so now with all this talk about double-digit unemployment and it seems all the problems in our community, it seems to me starts with an economic problem that we can solve with economic solutions. And when I say that is because when I go visit these jails in this city and around the country, I ask people stuff. Well, why are you here? I was stealing. Doing what? Trying to solve an economic problem. Sister, why are you here? Prostituting. Doing what? Trying to solve an economic problem. What? And no matter where you go, somewhere along the line, the majority of our people are in jail instead of working in the community doing what? Using something illegal, but trying to do what? Solve an economic problem. And so I think during this year of Dr. King commemoration and all that, Dr. King said, keep a slice of bread in your own community. Keep your money in your own institutions. Develop your own businesses and jobs. Where are we now in terms of our state of affairs? Because we talked earlier about our state of mind. Let me start with you, Russ.
In terms of
where are we in terms of where should we be going? Is it, you say, what's the answer? What's the solutions? We're in a state of emergency. Black people are killing themselves over what? Economic problems and the desperate economic conditions in the street. But collectively, what do you think our state of mind is in terms of why are we here when we really don't have to be, in my judgment?
Well, I think that when you begin to look at this issue, I like to try to keep things in perspective, and you know, I see things as a process.
Okay.
And so civil rights, if you will, human rights, it's a process, and it's been going on, I say, since Cain hit Abel over the head for a slice of or some smoke, you know, because his smoke wasn't going where, you know, he thought it should go. And so I think that people have been involved in this conflict since humans began. I think we're at a place in time now where we've seen progress, and I think it's real important for us to understand that progress has happened. And we're talking about civil rights. 100 years ago, in fact, 150 years ago, I was laughing with you before the show, and you were talking about, you know, you were giving one of your speeches.
Yes. Hear my voice, right?
Okay.
Go ahead.
and talking about, you know, the inequities and all the things that were wrong, and very, very rightly so. And I said to you that, well, 150 years ago, if you stood up and said all those things, and particularly you're getting ready to say it on TV, there would be a tree out there waiting for you.
That's right.
Today, you can say that, and there's nothing. In fact, you got a bunch of folks who say that's right. Okay, and so I see progress. I see a shift and change, and I think it's really important for us to understand that as far as African Americans are concerned, we've gone from, as Jesse Jackson used to say, you know, the outhouse to the White House, and that is a fact. We are there, and we need to know that. We need to understand our power, because it's out of our power that you operate. When you think you have no power, you're weak, and we need to recognize that we have great power. We, as a race of people, came over here in chains, and today we have an African American in the White House, and so as a people, we have great power, and we need to recognize that power that we have. And so as we operate out of that power and realize that we can control our future, our destiny, because we have been doing that. We have moved. They couldn't keep us in chains.
Well, then and we can look at this because, and again, I had to go back and look at this myself, because when I start looking and what I consider progress now, yes, symbolically.
It's not even symbolic.
Well,
in fact, they could not keep us in chains.
We can't even eat. If Peace Produce say you ain't got no lettuce and tomatoes, you ain't gonna eat.
Well, there are plenty of folks who do eat.
No, but wait a minute.
Very well.
Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Being able to consume is one thing, but aren't we still sitting here waiting on somebody else to decide when we can eat, when we can drink?
Depends on the person. We have many more people. When we came here in chains, okay, we were told when to eat, when to work, when to stop working, when to go to the bathroom, when to whatever. Our total life was under someone else's control, and we were considered to be slaves. And we had no ability at that point to stop ourselves from being enslaved. Those chains no longer exist. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't still, many people aren't still enslaved mentally, because many people are. But the point is that they can no longer, and when I'm saying they, the folks who would like to enslave folks can no longer do that. Okay, they can't enslave you. You'd be worse than Chicken George. You know, they have to cut off both feet.
Well, we need to talk part of this student. Now, Grady, how do you see this?
Mark, I find myself having a different perspective because I come from the Roseland community.
Okay.
Okay. People will say that they shoot in Roseland every night. People will say that you can't walk down the street in Roseland. The media will shine the light on every negative thing that happens in Roseland. But in Roseland, they have some mansions in Roseland.
Yeah.
They have some manicured lawns in Roseland. They have some graduates in Roseland that's on the honor roll, okay? But there's no mention of any of those positive things. because there are some positive things that happen in Roseland. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to emphasize it? I don't know, but we must start, I believe, by taking back our media. Our media shines so much attention on those negative things. Darian Albert got killed on my block, okay? On my block. Right now, every morning, Monday through Friday, when I find myself leaving my home, my business, my building, I don't want a business, my building, I see the kids on the corner with their little psychedelic vests on just about every corner. When I leave Roseland and go to Inglewood, I find the same thing. The kids on the block with their psychedelic vests on. It took that young man's death to bring attention to the fact that we had a problem with passage through our community. But that's not new. I'm 68 years old. When I was at Dunbar Vocational High School, I knew not to go around DuSable. I knew not to go around Phillips, and I didn't do that. But it was a different time, because during those times, they just had chains and bats. They didn't have 38s and Uzis and all this other kind of stuff. What I'm getting to is the fact that we have some positive things happening, but nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. As I mentioned to him earlier, one of my heroes in the community is Diane Latiker, all right? She and her husband run kids off the block, not because of a tragedy that happened, not because one of their kids, and I think they have about 6 kids, I don't remember, but anyway, not because of one of the kids getting shot in the doorway or shot on the block, but because she wanted to give her kids something to do. That's positive. That's positive. That's not a reaction from the negative side. That's a reaction from the positive side. This mother wanted to give her kids something to do, and she did it, okay? But now, how many foundations are coming in to help them, okay? How many media outlets? There's been 1 or 2. Yes, I saw the little 4-page spread in the Tribune, but is it a continuous thing? And I really and truly don't believe that Diane Latiker, Miss Diane Latiker, is the only one. Because there's a lady in the Roseland community that I remember she called me up, and she's just sitting and waiting right now because she's looking for some resources. She has a plan to teach every kid in Chicago how to read, all right? Unfortunately, she may not have that public relations savvy and things of that nature. Again, my point is there's some positive things happening in our community, not just on the south side, but also on the west side. But unfortunately, our media is not shining the light.
Well, okay, we can get to that too, because once again, after being involved in this movement for 40 years, and then you ask yourself, have we been here before? In terms of, you know, a lot of times we look up and say, we give ourselves a defeatist attitude about why we can't. And I think back to, how did Dr. King and others lead a whole civil rights movement with no fax machine? No tweet, no Twitter, no email, no network. Because we decided then, if the regular networks weren't going to talk with us, we developed our own grassroots network of being able to beat the odds, even against the challenges then of, you can't have no media. So once again, if the media don't want to give us our light, how do we do it anyhow? And that's part of how technology, with all its benefits, damn, technology made a lot of us lazy, because we used to have to go to meetings and physically talk to people and work stuff out. Oh, now we just, we text, I've done it, I spoke on it, go back and sit down. And that's not how we got to where we are. But let me get to you, Darius, because you are a young person coming up, and a lot of the things that we're doing in the different levels fall on your shoulders and others. But as Brother Webb Evans would tell me, you know, our elders represent the past and the present. Our young people represent the present and the future. And even with our differences, we both meet where? At the present. And that kind of consciousness ain't there either. But as a young person, how do you see where we are and where this generation of young people fit in terms of moving us back where we belong?
Well, Mark, definitely, you know, the words that was said before me from my elders. I definitely appreciate those words, and I definitely echo them as well with much respect. You know, and I love this setting here because it's beautiful to see the elders, you know, centered around the young man, because this is indeed what history is all about. And you know, the role of history, you know, from hearing from Dr. Russ, he was talking about like Obama and where we are today, and his election. You know, from hearing from my brother Grady, from how he emphasizes the Roseland in the community with Darian Albert, you know, and his murder, and you know, his murder has significance to me as well, because that's how I began, you know, my work. You know, his murder inspired me to step forward and say something must be done about the countless murder and brutal killings of our children in these streets. And I say our children, but they're really my little brothers and sisters. And I look at the movement and I tie that into it and say, how did we get from marching for rights to vote and for marching and boycotting buses to now we're marching to say like enough is enough in our community with the guns. And it's not white people shooting us, it's black people shooting black people. Black people robbing black people. Black people
back to the economic
raping
problem.
Black people. Back to your economic problem. But when you look at history, we always have had leaders to step forward and say enough is enough. From Dr. King, he stepped forward and said enough is enough, and he led a movement. Barack Obama stepped forward and said enough is enough, change we could believe in. Somebody has to step forward. So from what I'm looking at from, and the conversations I'm having in my circles with young leaders, I'm looking at them saying, what are we doing now to prepare ourselves to step forward? Because we need to step forward. We need to stop sitting back Facebooking, stop sitting back tweeting, stop sitting back doing all this lazy stuff that we do, and do something with our education, do something with our mindsets, do something more than just watch BET, MTV, trying to follow what Beyonce said, trying to see what's a new Lil Wayne song CD. All that is not important. We got more pressing matters and issues going on within our community. We need to focus on that now. We need to be figuring out how can we run for office, how can we step forward and answer the call in our life to pastor a church, how can we step forward and lead a movement, because right now it is a desperate need of young leaders to step forward and answer the call on their life. I'm sick and tired of being alone in these efforts. Every morning I'll put a Facebook status up trying to get the people to get more inspired to do something, and it's more than just that. I'm more than just Facebook. I'm more than just Twitter. I'm out here working, and that's really what I have to say right there.
I think, we'll say that because Minister Farrakhan said some time ago, and see, we get to this point once again. Dr. King said we're stuck in a paralysis of analysis. Why do we got to keep talking about stuff so much? Let's just go do what we say we need to do.
Right.
Minister Farrakhan said some time ago, politics without economics is symbol without substance. Right. And I'm telling you today, because I worked in all these organizations and for all these leaders, and I finally looked back and looked at today, every black media, every black organization, I'm telling you as I sit here, if I'm lying, tell me I'm lying. If it wasn't for white corporate sponsorship, most of our black organizations fighting for black people would shut down.
Right.
They'd be closed.
You're absolutely right.
They would freaking be closed.
Right. Absolutely right.
And so the people who demand, come here, do that, you ain't even a member.
Right.
So how in the hell are we supposed to come help serve you if you won't invest? And that's why I said we lost part of our mind, because we want to speak on it and then walk away. That's not how we got here as a people, my friends. And I tell you this, because see, that's what makes me mad. I've done this too long. So I don't need you to analyze nothing else for me. After 40 years, I don't need to read no more study. The example of what happened to the people in Black Wall Street the example of what Dr. King told us to do, if we just did that, these jails in Chicago would be museums. Yeah. Because when we spent money with our people, when we built our own business, there was gangs and drugs and dope then. And we wasn't out here. And I told you, one of the reasons I didn't go to Darius Albert's funeral, because I worked out in Roseland too. Let me tell you something. Far too many people, it's symbolism now. We needed thousands of people to show up when we tried to save the intervention, the safety zones that were right there. At the very spot where Darius Albert was killed, I'm downtown with the residents of Roseland telling the governor, at this point in time, we can't afford for you to cut that program. Because right through here is where people's lives get saved. And we sit back and watch them say, well, there's a tight budget and blah, blah. And so not even a few weeks after the governor cut those intervention workers that provided that safety zone, Darius Albert was killed right there. So I don't need you to bring your butt to my funeral when you wouldn't stand up to help keep me alive. And I don't need thousands of people. Thousands of people show up after you get shot and killed. Then the very next week, and you know this too, it's the same group of people who basically come to the meetings. You can't come 1,000 strong to a funeral and take your butt back home. The real work happens out there in the community every day, and far too many people. I said the same thing at St. Sabina. If 2,000 people pack into St. Sabina and say, we want to hit a wall on poverty, it was a whole lot of poor people's meeting going on Monday morning. None of y'all but was there. So I'm saying, where do we, because part of our problem is, do we want to snap our finger, press the remote? And so I'm saying, I say this again. How do you live in a city? Houses the Reverend Jesse Jackson, Minister Louis Farrakhan, the biggest black talk show host, the biggest black radio station, the biggest black newspaper, the biggest black publishing company, and you're trying to tell me we're still sitting up here wondering why we ain't got no jobs with a $70 billion spending power? Have we lost our state of mind?
No, it's not a question of, from my perspective, of losing our state of mind.
Help me.
As much as it is levels of consciousness that go on, that exist. And so, from our perspective, we see that there's what we call a poverty consciousness and there's a prosperity consciousness. And a large percentage of people tend to operate out of the poverty consciousness. What is a poverty consciousness? Well, basically it's a mindset that looks at the world and says, this is how the world is, and that's just how it is, and it's this way, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's how it is. And so when a person's mindset is locked in that perspective, I could walk up to them and hand them a job and they won't keep it because, or an opportunity to start a business and they won't take it. They'll see a need because they're experiencing that need. We need to have more stores in the community because I got to go way over there to the store, and they won't start one. That's the poverty consciousness. The prosperity consciousness is the consciousness that says, yeah, this is how things are, but they don't have to be that way. Now, you operate out of a prosperity consciousness because you look at things and you say, this is how they are, but it doesn't have to be that way, and I'm going to do something about it to change that situation.
So here we go. So help me now. So only the dope man, only the people selling bootleg CDs, only the people selling, hold it now, coming to the studio tonight.
That's not true. That's not true.
Now you're going to tell me, no.
Because,
no. I'm just telling you what I see.
No, that's not, because you're not seeing.
I am seeing what I'm seeing. I see young people out there with pockets full of money, providing a service that people want. And I'm telling you, there was a time when S.B. Fuller said, I'm going to bring these products to you. There was a time when the black banks came and met you in the neighborhood. We did not leave the minds of our people to the negative element, because and no matter how broke we are, these other folks, they found a way to make money no matter how broke you are. But we got to see the sign coming up. We got to do a round two to this. Because this is what. But let me
just
I see the sign coming up. But I don't want to leave nobody else out in the last 3 minutes. Okay. But just tell me, because we can't. One thing about controlling our own show now, we can come back and do page 2. Now, I'm just okay. Let me calm down. So you want to go ahead and okay? We'll go ahead.
To make the point. See, you're saying you see the drug dealers and the people in a negative vein, but to go back to what Grady was what I thought I heard him saying, we have a much larger percentage of our population who are downtown working, who live in very nice neighborhoods, who have a middle income, upper middle income, and upper income status, as opposed to 200 years ago when we had none of that. So what I'm saying is that the consciousness level is shifting, and we see today that we're able to put an African American in the White House. That's power. And when we understand that we do have power, we've been exercising it, and the changes that we see in society are the result of that. Now, once we understand, and as we understand that, and we step into my personal power, your personal power, and I'm really digging this young man here because he's got a lot of personal power, okay? And
thank you, sir.
And once we understand that and use that personal power to begin moving forward and doing things in the community, as you've always been talking about, okay, that's where it is. But that's a personal transformation that has to take place with that individual, and that's from our perspective. Right. The 21st century is about personal transformation. So I'll let the
and if we don't go back, because once again, in the black community today, if somebody decides I'm gonna stop selling fruits and vegetables, we'll ask. I mean, our butt to be starving.
That's right.
And so what I'm saying is, why do we have to sit up here with this kind of? That's what I'm trying to tell you. So we can grow our own food, make our own clothes, and bank our own. So I'm saying, with all this genius in our collective state of mind, you got to tell me. I mean, you got to write a book like this. I'm saying, so God must be angry to give you this kind of economic power, all these geniuses, and we get stuck with, well, why? Well, why? And see, I've learned that the heck with that. So I've learned now, when I say let's go, but why? Okay, later for you, because ain't no need to me. We ain't got no more time for no analysis. It's simple. If you love Dr. King, do what the man said. Spend your own money in your own community, spend your own money building your own businesses and your own jobs, and you wouldn't be sitting here saying, oh, somebody help me. Because you could do for yourself what you're telling somebody else to do. So that's why I say this is the most difficult job I've had in my life, because I fought for the right to hear. But what's wrong with fighting for the right to run your own when you can do the same thing? So I ain't here to set an excuse from nobody, and I'm going to be making a lot of people mad because it's unacceptable, friends. God don't give you this kind of power, and we sitting here acting like we helpless, like 21st century slaves. Can somebody bring me some food? Can somebody bring me some clothes to buy? Can somebody give me a loan? When you got power, what they say, if the black people's economic power, we would be the third country. Friends, Black Wall Street, we bring it back. We did it before. We're going to bring back that spirit of Black Wall Street again. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to do, and stay tuned, because we're going to be doing part 2 to this till we get to something we can measure. I'm Mark Allen. Thank you so much for watching, and tune in next time.